Hey, how are you? This is Aaron McKay with Bird Be Gone. We are back with another installment of Ask an Expert. And today I'm joined by my coworkers Mike Dougherty and Bryan Donoho.
How's it going out there today?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for
Yeah.
asking, man.
Good.
Yeah.
It's Friday.
How are you guys?
It's Friday. I'm happy.
Yeah, how are the viewers? I'm outstanding. We got a chance to get out of the office, or excuse me, out of the home,
out of the
Right.
home
to the
office.
office, to have these little chats with you fine folks. So
All right.
let's do it.
Yeah, so today we are diving into how do you deal with nesting birds. This is a phone call, email, and if you didn't know, there actually is a feature on our website where you can click Ask an Expert and type in your questions. So that's the origin of how this podcast came about, because we get these questions literally all the time. So let's say you're a homeowner, you're a commercial bird control service provider, and you've come across a nesting bird situation. How do you deal with it, guys?
Well, my initial conversation is always about exclusion. Typically, where you're going to find nesting birds are situations underneath cover.
Okay.
You know, whenever you're identifying something, one type of product versus another, it's always crucial to look for cover. That's where birds are going to nest.
By cover, you mean shelter.
Cover, shelter,
Okay.
anything. If it's
Shade.
it's one of the pillars of pests. It's food, shelter, water.
Yep.
So there's one right there. It's one of them.
Right.
It's crucial. That's a highly motivating spot for them because that's where their young are, especially in the spring and the summertime. It protects them. It's of their highest priority when they're looking for the food, water, shelter kind of thing.
Yeah. So I personally actually had a nest on my house about 2 weeks ago. And let's just say you're an uninitiated homeowner and you have a nest on your property. What do you do first? And maybe not to scare our viewers, what can you do legally?
Right. Well, I think you first have to identify what kind of bird it is. That's really going to dictate how you're going to move forward. If it's a bird that's protected under law, you have to leave it alone. You have to let them finish their reproductive cycle. Then you can address it, at which time you're going to remove the nests and sanitize it, and then look for a product to keep them out.
Yep.
Do we want to talk about which birds we can and can't do that with, or should we stick to just kind of the situations nesting at home?
Well,
now?
I think maybe we can throw out just the high-level guidance as to what nesting birds you can remove and which ones you can't.
Right.
So I've always, people have always asked, hey, can you come in and do a class on all the birds that are protected? I'm like, that's a 3-day class.
Yeah, right.
And I'm not an ornithologist, but it's a whole lot easier to look at the ones that aren't protected. And
Correct.
Pigeons, English house sparrows, and starlings are all non-native to North America. So if you're encountering any of those birds and nesting, it is okay to remove nests and do it with dignity. Don't throw them down on the ground or anything like that.
Right. Right.
Do it humanely. So any migratory bird, a native bird, or any raptors, any birds of prey, they are all protected.
Right.
There you go.
I just got a call yesterday. Someone had a nesting hawk inside of their warehouse.
Oh, that's a toughie.
Yep.
That's a tough one.
I'm like, 1, don't go near it. You're going to get hurt. 2, first things first, call Fish and Wildlife and have them help you out. They will come down.
And that's a good point.
Every state's a little different, but that's the first place to call if you have a protected bird like that.
Right.
Yep.
That's the safest option.
Yeah.
And you could even, as far as the 3 birds you mentioned, you could go so far as to say they're invasive, which they are.
Yeah.
I mean, they push out native birds. And when it comes to the native birds, I have a book about that thick of North American birds, and there are just way too many to list. So if it's those 3, you can have at it. So in your example, let's say that it was a English house sparrow.
Yep.
Remove the nests, whatever's in it, with dignity, as you mentioned, and clean it up. Get the nest out of there, sanitize it, disinfect it, so that there's no trace of smell. I think we know that they're attracted by their own scent, so that's you just eliminate that guiding factor, I guess, and then you can move on to an exclusion product. So
Yep. And maybe just as a quick comment, Are there any best practices you guys would recommend regarding sanitization? Because a lot of people don't know birds and their debris can carry a lot of disease. We actually have a separate podcast episode specifically on that topic. So for a homeowner or a commercial service provider, how do you protect yourself when you're cleaning a nest?
If you can find PPE.
Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah. Protection, full face respirator, HEPA filters, goggles, earplugs. You don't want to get it in your ears. Gloves, Tyvek suit. General cleaning practices. Remove everything physically you can after you've just wet it down to create create a dampen or a moisture so that it doesn't stir up any debris.
Right.
Clean it off. Use a brush. Physically remove everything. Scrape it off, and then there's the waste digester that you would use to spray on the stuff that you couldn't all get off, and then go back and scrub it off and make sure it's clean. Once it's clean and you've got all of that stuff off, the last thing you would do would be put down the disinfectant.
Yep.
Obviously, there are different degrees of clean. One is like, can you eat? Do you have to be able to eat off of it, or is it just on your roof and you just need to remove the debris and give it a quick disinfecting? So there's definitely a degree of clean that needs to be communicated with the customer. To what degree do they want it cleaned out and sanitized?
Right. And let's think off the top of our head for homeowners, because I know, there's different places that they nest around people's houses. What are the most common ones? In my mind, I think of entryways.
Yep.
Underneath eaves.
Underneath dormers. That one roof line comes out and you've got that angle. That's probably the most common one on a residential.
On light fixtures.
Yep.
What else can you think of? I'm just trying to give examples for those watching out there. Just so that all kind of lumps into one nesting situation, if you will, but different situations on the house.
They love air handling units.
Air handling units.
They love that those air handling units where there's the wall around it, and they love the shelter and the water that it provides. Usually there's condensation around those.
Right.
Yeah, the one I mentioned a few minutes ago was an eave. Basically walking in, it was a structural beam coming off that was holding the roof. Yep. And there's a small gap right on it.
Yep.
Again, just to drive home the point you mentioned earlier, when you're disinfecting, you want to do a really good job getting as much of it off. Yeah. Because when birds leave their droppings, it includes small proteins called pheromones, which is basically like a blinking sign saying, hey, this is a cool place to hang out. So if you can do a good job cleaning that up, the likelihood of whatever bird control device you install being successful goes up significantly.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And one more place I saw, too, are outdoor speakers, for those of you that have them.
Oh, yes.
There are 3 of them going on in my house right now. And I can't get up there to see what kind of bird they are.
Great application for the Spectrum V. That's behind you, but...
So, we've identified a nesting problem. We've identified that, hey, it's a non-protected species. So we can clean up the nest and the debris. Or we discover that it's a protected species. We waited for them to finish nesting. Right. So we cleaned up everything.
Brings me to a point on that.
Sure.
The 2 birds that we've been experiencing calls on right now is... Still getting some calls on swallows. Those are a migratory bird. They are protected.
Yep. Right.
And another one that we do get a lot of calls on that people don't always realize it's seagulls. They're migratory, so they are protected.
Marine birds too.
All marine birds. Yeah, they're all protected under Federal Migratory Bird Treaty Act.
Correct. That's good.
So people sometimes call and they want to trap seagulls. You're not allowed to do that.
As annoying as they are protected.
Yes, absolutely. So I just wanted to make that.
No, it's good. No, I appreciate it.
Those are 2 very important ones that we get a lot of calls.
Yeah, that's really, really good. So we clean everything up. Now what do? How do we prevent future bird populations, or that same maybe we weren't able to relocate or dispose of the birds in a humane way? How can we prevent that same population or future population coming back to that nesting area?
That's where we install our BirdNet 2000. When it comes down to exclusion, it's basically there's 3 basic things that go into an exclusion. Is you need to put anchors around that perimeter, whatever it is, every 1.5 feet. Once those anchors are in place, then you run cable through the perimeter of those anchors and tighten those up with your turnbuckles and basically like a picture frame. Yep. And then the last and the slowest part of the whole process is hog ringing the netting onto that cable.
Yep. And we'll do a deep dive on netting install in a future podcast. But of all the products that are available from Bird Be Gone, that's probably the most labor intensive and the most technical kind of expertise you'll need to be able to do it well.
And most effective.
Yeah.
That's this is speaking on a professional level.
Yep.
For commercial bird jobs, if you can get the end user to agree to net, that's the way to do it.
Right.
It's you put it up, that problem's gone. They're not getting through it.
Yep.
If you do it right, they're not
done
getting
right.
through it. As Aaron mentioned, the labor is a little bit higher, therefore the cost is a little bit higher. So understand sticker shock's a part of that, but netting is the first suggestion we always give. I think we understand that doesn't always work or doesn't fall in line with the budget of the end user, but keep in mind that would be the first suggestion I'd make, and then you kind of work down.
Yeah, because it's a permanent solution.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
I like to use the example of you can net off a 1 by 1 foot square area, or you can net off a 300,000 square foot airplane hangar. So I like to see it's either from homeowners to hangars.
Yep.
And everywhere in between. It's just that versatile a product.
That's good.
Can be applied just
You
about
even have the
anywhere.
alliteration. They both start with H's.
You like that?
I saw that. That was good. From
Or,
homeowners to hangers.
or nesting equals netting.
Ooh,
Hey,
man.
hey, remember that.
That's probably, you guys have probably heard me
And-
say that many times.
Well, and then another big exclusion product that's kind of caught us by storm is the solar mesh.
Then
Yeah.
Bryan is the king.
Who'd have
With
thought
the
something
solar-
that simple? So that is exclusion in its most basic terms, and it works extremely well. I mean,
Yeah.
when people install this stuff, the problem's gone.
Yep.
Then they do business with the neighbor, and then the next neighbor, and the next neighbor. So that's a good example of residential exclusion. It's probably
absolutely.
the most common form
Sure.
of residential exclusion
Yep.
is with the solar panel mesh.
Yep, and that's
Yeah.
a big topic right now. Everybody's
Yep.
calling in asking about it, and
Yep.
it's just
Sure.
And I think we got another podcast on that
We do.
Oh, we do?
specifically,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
I might have done that.
You may have been on
Oh,
it.
huh.
I don't know. And as a homeowner, if you feel comfortable getting on your roof, that is something you can do yourself. It's actually really, really simple. But if you don't have that level of comfort being on an elevated location or on your roof, give us a call. That's why we're here, right? We can get you connected with an installer that can help you out with that project.
So the next exclusion would be
oh, bird slope.
Yep.
slope.
Bird slope. Are we going to show any of it on the?
I can throw a picture
Yeah.
up there. We have some magic on the back
We
end
did.
of the
Okay,
podcast,
magic.
yeah.
Magic is always good. That's
So bird slope. What's bird slope?
Bird slope. The best placement of bird slope is typically in those parking garages where you have the parking deck hits a column, and you have it creating a little cubby hole.
Yep.
And instead of doing some, a bunch of 3,000 little nets that are, 1 foot by 3 foot, the slope can be a good fit in there for, saving some labor.
Mhm.
Provided it's a 5.5 inch deep or it's up to a 10.5 inch deep ledge.
Yep.
That's typically where I see it working best.
Yep.
And it keeps them from being able to stand on it. So it sits at a 45-degree
So-
angle.
There we go.
So they can't nest on it. They can't stand on it. I think one of the advantages, it goes up very clean. You'll see it a lot of times in like windowsills or other ledges where like you said, you don't want to use a whole bunch of
covered
nets.
areas. Absolutely.
Right, and it goes up real clean, tan or beige, so it looks like most of the building material. And it, just kind of put it up and forget it. It's permanent product. It's going to last forever and does a good job. But it definitely is more specific to certain kinds of jobs. It's not as versatile as bird netting.
Exactly. The key ingredient to its success is making sure the front edge of that slope hits the very outside edge of the ledge,
Yep.
and also the
Right.
top side of it hits the back side of the
Yep.
ledge, so you don't create any other
Another enclosure.
secondary pest problems that would go behind it.
Right.
And it either works or it doesn't. It's one of those products where it either fits like a glove and you know it,
Yep.
or you're going,
You're gonna have
this
to-
may not have been the best.
You may have to
idea.
modify it. Absolutely.
So if there's any question, by all means call us. We've been doing this a long time. We know what situations are right for slope and what situations aren't. So if you have any doubt, just
Sure.
give one of us a call.
always give us a call.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
And so we've gone through the kind of the key products when we're talking about exclusion. We talked about netting. We've talked about the solar mesh. We've talked about slope. But in some instances, we can't use those products.
Correct.
For whatever reason,
Correct,
right?
absolutely.
Maybe the budget won't allow it, or the end user doesn't like the look or the feel of those products. So if that's the case, what are some other alternative products that we do make that may not necessarily be specifically for exclusion, but can actually be effective to help solve a nesting situation?
I think that's one of the ones where we've seen the Spectrum V being put into nesting situations, obviously with a thorough cleaning
Yep.
like that. But some of the other ledge products you can put in, I've seen the track
Yep.
put
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Again, always the first choice is the exclusion, but
Yep.
Sometimes they
an
will
option,
they,
right?
they
Doesn't
can't
allow
work
for
in
it.
those situations.
Yep.
My head immediately goes to that example you gave about the eaves going in an entryway.
Yep.
You're not going to put up a slope or mesh. I mean, you can, but a lot of times they're not going to pay for that. Nobody wants to do that.
Yep.
So that's a situation where I'd probably use spike.
Yeah.
If you put it in right, clean it, put it in, it does a good job because it's such just a small confined space. They're not going to be able to set anywhere to drop
Yep.
debris on it. And there's other instances where you can use spike if it's done the right way and you clean it right.
Yep.
Okay, so these are all again kind of second choices when budget or whatever doesn't allow for netting or other things. So spike or spectrum V, avian block.
Yep,
I know
avian
people have
block's
had
great.
success with it. I think it has to do with the smell. Instead of their pheromones that they're smelling, they're smelling that methylene thranolate. So
Yeah. Yeah, and that avian block is a great product. Let's say access is a really difficult thing, especially if you're a homeowner, and for whatever reason you can't actually get up there to either adhere or screw down some spike or an alternative product.
Sure.
Avian block, you can literally put it on a pole or just hang it on something. As long as it's near that area, it's not visually obtrusive. You can't see it, but the birds smell it and they know that's not a place to hang out. And again, if you do a great job cleaning, there are a lot of alternative products that can help you solve nesting situations.
or for homeowners when they nest in a bush,
Yeah.
get
Right.
rid of the nest, hang a couple of those avian
Trees?
block pouches, good to go.
Yeah, no, I had a great conversation with a gentleman who had a cherry tree above his car in a carport, and birds had been just literally laying waste to his car for years and years and years.
Right.
He hung up 3 avian block bags and problem solved.
Nice.
And that's an area where the birds have consistent shelter and they have food, so they're highly motivated to be there.
Right.
But the bags were effective, which is pretty
great.
amazing.
That's great.
I did-
Another happy customer.
Yeah.
Another situation where that worked, the guys did do the exclusion for the solar panels, and there was about 50 plus birds still hanging out around the solar panels.
Yep.
And we had sampled out some the avian pouches, and they put them up around the solar panels, and it pushed all the birds off
Yeah.
away from the area, not even at the neighbor's house. They were very surprised at how well it worked,
Yeah.
and how quickly it worked.
Yep. That's awesome.
So
Great.
Well, any other closing comments on how to solve nesting problems?
No, that was pretty thorough. It was
We
pretty,
just fed them a fire hose full of
we
information.
did. We did.
Did you appreciate that? Because it felt good on our side.
all right.
Well, cool. Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time today. Thank you, Bryan. Thanks, Mike. And
Thanks,
we'll join
Aaron.
you guys again soon. Have a great day.